This is Alternative Political Analysis, and in this video we will discuss Wahhabi ideology and opinion polls concerning Muslims, and most of the evidence and polls are from Pew Research, and I will express the percentage of Muslims in each nation who believe in making Sharia the law of the land. Russia 42%, Bosnia 15%, Kosovo 20%, Albania 12%, Kazakhstan 10%, Tajikistan 27%, Kyrgyzstan 35%, Turkey 12%, Azerbaijan 8%, Malaysia 86%, Thailand 77%, Indonesia 72%, Afghanistan 99%, Pakistan 84%, Bangladesh 82%, Iraq 91%, Morocco 83%, Palestine 89%, Egypt 74%, Jordan 71%, Tunisia 56%, Lebanon 29%, Niger 86%, Djibouti 82%, Zaire, Democratic Republic of Congo 74%, Nigeria 71%, Uganda 66%, Ethiopia 65%, Mozambique 65%, Kenya 64%, Mali 63%, Ghana 58%, Senegal 55%, Cameroon 53%, Liberia 52%, Chad 47%, Guinea-Bissau 47%, Tanzania 37%. And a few polls showed that Daesh is universally despised in Lebanon, and we can thank March the 14th for that. 94% of Jordanians are anti-Daesh and ISIS. 62% of Pakistanis did not give an opinion on Daesh and ISIS. 14% of Nigeria is pro-Daesh and Boko Haram, which is 20% of Nigerian Muslims. 92% of Indonesian Muslims say Wahhabi violence is unjustified. 91% of Iraqi Muslims say likewise, as do 86% of US Muslims. 7% of US Muslims believe Wahhabi violence is sometimes justified. 1% of US Muslims think Wahhabi violence is often justified, as do 40% of Palestinian Muslims, 39% of Afghan Muslims, 29% of Egyptian Muslims, and 26% of Bengali Muslims all think Wahhabi violence is justified. 68% of Nigerians are concerned about Wahhabi violence. That's due to Boko Haram and Daesh. 67% of Lebanese are concerned about Wahhabi violence. That's due to March the 14th. And 48% of US Muslims think Islamic clerics do not do enough to condemn Wahhabi violence. And this brings us on to polls that show 48% of US Muslims have exclusively Muslim friends. 69% of US Muslims think religion is important. 96% of US Muslims believe in God, which begs the question of why the other 4% are Muslim. 65% of US Muslims pray daily. 47% of US Muslims attend mosque weekly. 70% of US Muslims are Democrats. 11% of US Muslims are Republicans. 68% of US Muslims are pro-big government. 21% of US Muslims are pro-small government. 39% of US Muslims are pro-LGBTQ. 45% of US Muslims are anti-LGBTQ. 65% of US Muslims are Sunni, and 11% of US Muslims are Shia. And this brings us on to Gate Institute research polls and on British Muslims, and this was reported on in The Guardian. 52% of British Muslims are anti-LGBTQ. 47% of British Muslims do not think that teachers in schools should be LGBTQ, and 4% of British Muslims are pro-Wahhabi terror, and 23% of British Muslims want Sharia law in Britain, and 39% of British Muslims think that a wife must always obey her husband, and 21% of British Muslims do not condemn stoning. 31% of British Muslims are pro-polygamy. 1 in 6 British Muslims are segregationists, and a quarter would not report someone they suspected of Wahhabi terror to the authorities. And these polls show that there is a significant Wahhabi minority, but in the opinion polls in the West, it showed the overwhelming body of opinion are anti-Wahhabi, as opposed to pro-Wahhabi and willing to act upon it. However, when certain beliefs are overtly displayed, it must raise questions.